With the pandemic and the subsequent economic downturn that came from it, we are living a very unique moment in monetary history, with many claiming we are on the doorstep of a period of dangerous inflation due to huge creation of new money, as central banks desperately attempt to kickstart the economy. Now, the older people watching this might remember the day when we still had precious metal on our coins, and the economy had a certain value anchor on hard assets such as gold. But for many, just like me, we have lived in a world where money is entirely based on trust and faith on its value and its issuing country's power. The Romans and their coins have some amazing lessons to teach us on monetary history. Even cooler, it's the kind of lesson we can hold in our hands, as they also knew very well the nasty effects of inflation. And if a Roman from the 3rd century saw what we were doing today, he would probably have quite a lot to warn us. Today, we will let the Romans teach us a lesson on debasement and inflation by looking at their coins. Let's go! The ancient world operated on a much less centralized, much slower economy, where only two real things could possibly be used as money internationally due to their universal acceptance: gold and silver. Nowadays, we can swap around our dollars by euros and then to pounds, etc., because all of these currencies are based on very solidly established countries. We know, at least for quite some time, will remain stable countries and back their currencies with value. This reality did not exist in the ancient world. This was a world of very belligerent people, of very unstable and easily crumbling states, where credit, as we know today, wasn't really possible. So payments on things with intrinsic value, such as gold and silver, were the only practical way of storing and transferring value between people. And one of the greatest international coins used in the ancient world was obviously the Roman denarius. If you are from a country that speaks a Latin language, it's very probable your word for money comes directly from the word denarius. It was developed initially as a way for the growing Roman Republic to adopt silver and trade with the Greeks in the south, as they were using silver in the shape of the drachma for much longer. And it quickly became, with the growing importance of Rome, the most recognizable and acceptable coin of the ancient world, as it was just very widespread, had very good reputation and silver content, well over 95%, and it was basically very well respected everywhere. And just like today, each state had the monopoly on issuing coins on their own territory, and also had the power to control how much a coin was worth, as in its face value, which they always tariffed just above the metal value on the coin, as a way to profit and also to prevent or to control the flow of precious metals outside of the country. A denarius that traveled outside of Roman territory could only purchase you what its precious metal content was worth. So a certain pressure existed for money to stay in its home territory, unless the foreign trade being made with its bullion value had the potential of offsetting the loss in purchasing power. And for a very long time, the economy of Rome was very stable. Many silver mines, spoils of war, and a very well-developed economy allowed Rome to compensate for the metal it lost on foreign trade and the maintenance of its military spending with its money income. Denarii were minted for many years in good weight and good quality silver, and it was very highly regarded everywhere. But the system had many potential places where it could get a short supply of silver and the whole system could go very wrong very quickly. For now, however, the denarius was kept at a nearly pure silver composition. With the transition from a republic to an empire, the prerogative of minting coins and precious metals was placed entirely in the hands of the emperor, and the army became much more important on political affairs, as well as on the state budget. If the supply of silver was somehow disrupted, or the expenditure of the state suddenly increased due to maybe an emperor not very good with managing public spending, or a power-hungry army demanding raises on their wages, you have a very, very bad and potentially lethal, if you are the emperor, problem on your hands. Despite the many turbulences of the 1st century, the denarius kept nearly intact its silver purity, although it lost a little bit of weight. Remember that by that time, credit markets were not really a possibility, so if your coffers were empty, this could result in political instability, or even worse, many soldiers with very pointy swords going unpaid. This tetradrachma, for example, struck under Emperor Trajan, is an example from that. This is a coin of very good silver quality, and it was one of the main priorities of Trajan to make sure these coins, which were used to pay for soldiers in the frontier, to reach the pockets of these troops marching with him at the utmost haste. With the passing of time, the Romans resorted to something called debasement. The debasement was when the state manipulated the initial proportion between a certain amount of metal for a certain number of good coins. They would secretly mint coins of good metal but reduced weight, or have their silver content per coin reduced, while the coin retained its original face value. This was a mechanism states could use to quickly inflate the total money supply and mint more coins without having to mine, tax, or plunder more silver. Since the internal market operated, at least in principle, with the face value of the coin, not their silver value, they could just pretty much get money out of thin air. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, this is a fraud. Well, morally justifiable instances of debasement to raise emergency funds happen on punctual emergencies, like on the eruption of the Vesuvius that destroyed Pompeii on 79 AD, when Emperor Titus temporarily minted slightly debased denarii and used the excess silver to pay for emergency relief efforts for the dislodged population. The problem really started, however, around the middle of the 2nd century AD, when Roman expansion slowed down, drying up the income from plundered enemies, and the output of the silver mines also started to dry up, as well as the public spending, as well as the maintenance of the state apparatus and the army, started slowly creeping up. By the end of the reign of Marcus Aurelius, the denarius had decreased to between 78 and 75% silver. Remember, we were talking previously about 90-something%, so that is a noticeable decrease. But for now, the coin was still reasonably respectable. So how does this work? Well, let's say you're a craftsman and you have just forged a sword that will cost on the market, let's say, 10 denarii. You are not dumb, you want to trade your sword for good, pure silver. And you knew very well how much silver a denarius was supposed to have. So let's say one day you realize the emperor has secretly, because they would always do this in secrecy, decreased the silver content of the denarius by 10%. Well, you're not going to pay for the difference, nor will anyone else. Soon, all of the prices will be readjusted to acquire the same amount of silver, fine silver, with the new debased denarii. In this case, 11 denarii instead of 10 to compensate for the missing silver per coin. And there we go, we have just seen inflation in its most primitive state. And then came the infamous 3rd century, when political instability meant a near constant struggle for power, where many emperors met horrible ends at the point of a sword, and candidates for the imperial position would be willing to do anything to raise the funds necessary to maintain their troops and their power. Debasement by that time became common practice, and emperors started getting very creative with their tricks. Emperor Caracalla, on a maneuver to increase the monetary supply, debased the silver coins to 50% silver and instituted the antoninianus, a coin worth 2 denarii but only possessing around 1.5 times the silver content of 1 denarius. This sudden injection of new, worse quality money on the economy generated a very substantial inflation and made people hoard away the earlier, pure coins with just bad coins going around in circulation, and this aggravated the problem even more. The Romans also started using very tricky metallurgy techniques to mask the ever-increasing debasement of their coins. One of them was called depletion silvering. Due to the nature of copper and silver, they don't mix very well. So when they casted the coin blanks, they would submerge them on an acid solution, and the coins would lose much of the copper from its surface, leaving a spongy layer of very high purity silver just on the outside surface of the coin. Once the coin was struck with a hammer blow on its design, the surface silver was flattered, giving the coin an appearance of very high-grade silver because of that layer, while having the core of poor metal. The empire was blatantly cheating at that point. This process reached its peak speed under the reign of Gallienus, arguably one of the unluckiest and less fortunate emperors to ever live. During his 15-year reign, Gallienus saw the empire split on three, the economy nosedive, barbarians invade in record numbers, and the empire in general was brought to its near collapse. So let's have a look on his very unfortunate coins. This example I have here comes from the year 254, right at the start of his reign. This coin has around 35% silver content and weighs 3.2 grams, yet we can see it has the appearance of a very high quality silver piece. Despite the bad quality control and really worn obverse dies, you can barely make out the emperor's face. This is an example of depletion silvering done masterfully. If we were to saw this coin in half, we would be greeted by a coppery red core of very low-grade silver in the center. We then move to the year 257, where this coin now only possesses 20% silver and weighs around 3 grams. On earlier centuries, this kind of depreciation, 15%, would take generations to happen. Here, it only took 3 years, and it would not be as bad as it could get. As you can see, the depletion silvering process is starting to lose its efficiency. There isn't barely any silver left to be leached to the surface, and the coin, even after being treated, starts taking this darker tone due to the excess of copper. The reverse on this coin features the emperor with his spear and shield and the legends Virtus Augustorum, the virtue of the emperors, for Gallienus and his father Valerian. Valerian would soon be defeated, captured by the Persians, and would die in captivity, and Gallienus' situation would get even worse, and it would be reflected on the coinage. From around the year 260 until the end of his reign in 268, his coinage would suffer monthly depreciations. Less and less silver would be added per coin, and it would consistently lose weight as inflation skyrocketed. By the end of his reign, this is the result: miserable coins of slightly over 2 grams. And as you can see, the depletion silvering process was abandoned. There wasn't any silver left, and they instead replaced it by a mere silver wash on top of a copper core. This example here is from Gallienus' wife, Salonina, and it's quite interesting because it shows an intact silvering layer. As you can see, it looks silver-ish, but it simply does not have the same shine and the same appearance of good silver. Gallienus' successor, Claudius Gothicus, would see the bottom of the depreciation pit, striking coins like this one, which miraculously still retains some of its silvering left. Most of the coins you see out in the market, all of the silver is basically gone. By that time, each coin would only have around 2% silver content. But it was not the end for Rome. The empire was blessed with a hero, Aurelian, who managed on his short reign between 270 and 275 to restore the split empire to unity, put an end, even if temporarily, to the barbarian invasions, and finally direct the empire towards the end of the crisis. Among one of the many things he set right was a monetary adjustment to the Antoniniani, now called the Aureliani or Aurelianiani by modern numismatists. It was restored to a respectable size of 4.5 grams, and its silver content was stabilized on 5%, a far cry from the old denarii, but much better. Many of his coins and his successors bear the letters XXI on the reverse, indicating the new 20 parts copper for 1 silver on each coin. As we can see here in this example, we now have a much more substantial coin, and there are a lot of examples with intact silver, which indicates a much higher quality coin being made. But unfortunately, by that time, the damage unfortunately was already done. More than half a century of civil wars, economic crisis, hyperinflation, and uncontrolled minting of worthless coins left the economy in shambles. Aurelian's successors were also very competent leaders, but they simply did not manage to fully understand and re-establish the Roman economy that was just too deteriorated and plagued with a deluge of coins of low intrinsic value. A total reform of the Roman monetary system was needed, and it too would only partly solve the problem. Diocletian is known nowadays mainly for his military prowess and his persecution of the Christians, but the man deserves some credit for being one of the biggest reformers of Roman coinage since the time of Augustus, 300 years before. He instituted what we call today late Roman coinage and completely reformulated the system with a series of new denominations aimed at re-establishing the faith on Roman money and remove all of that bad money from circulation. The antoninianus, the workhorse of the Roman monetary system, would be replaced by the folies, or numus, as some people also like to call it, a much bigger coin, still with 5% silver content, but with a significantly higher weight of nearly 10 grams, so the intrinsic value of the coin was very healthy for the time, as well as other denominations in silver, gold, and pure copper for smaller transactions. This reform was accompanied by one of Diocletian's biggest economic mistakes, which was an edict of maximum prices, of which the penalty for disobeying the max price for products was death. The system was completely inefficient, people died needlessly, the black market pretty much replaced the common economy, they tried to making professions hereditary, and the idea was basically scrapped after a couple of years. The new coinage would return some prestige and economic stability to the empire, but it was already too late, and as I said, the number of low-value coins out there was simply too big. The folies and other coins would once again start slowly being debased, reduced in size, reduced in silver quality, up to the very end of the empire, when the once impressive 10 grams coin would be reduced to nothing but barely recognizable lumps of bronze. These examples I'm showing now are from after the fall of Rome for the barbarians, and as you can see, you can barely call this a coin. Now, this is a numismatics channel. I will not get into contemporary political arguments here, but when you collect Roman coins, you are routinely confronted with the nasty results of the uncontrolled printing, or in this case, striking, of new money. Some people say the uncontrolled debasement of the denarius was one of the main causes of the fall of the empire. Others, that it was nothing but a symptom of bigger issues. In any ways, one thing is certain, it destroyed the once thriving Roman economy, plunged ancient people's purchasing power into oblivion with inflation, and resulted on many emperors meeting very sad ends. So what do you think? Do you think we can trace any parallels with what is happening right now with the debasement of Roman coins? Let us know in the comments. I hope you all stay safe and see you soon.